A corrupt, abusive man slapped a 78-year-old widow and knocked her to the ground in a crowded restaurant, and no one did anything. Everyone stood frozen, paralyzed by fear, as if the air had suddenly turned to ice. The man laughed, convinced he was untouchable in his small town, that his power was the law, not knowing he had just made the worst mistake of his life, because he had no idea that the woman's son was a Navy SEAL, and that he and his K-9 partner were about to walk through that very door. Before we continue, tell us where you're watching from, and if this story touches your heart, subscribe for more tales like this. The air in Aspen Ridge, Colorado, carried that clean, cold scent that signals winter is near. It was October, and the mountains surrounding the town looked like a living painting, covered in golds, deep reds, and the dark green of evergreen pines. Overnight, a light frost had silvered the needles, and now the morning sun was melting it into tiny drops that sparkled like crystals. The aroma of pine and damp earth accompanied every breath, and that calm was exactly what Alara Wilson had come seeking. Alara, a woman in her late 70s, with white hair carefully pinned back and eyes as serene as a clear sky, adjusted the shawl over her shoulders. She was a widow, a woman who had endured loss, hardship, and difficult years with a quiet strength many mistook for fragility, unaware that beneath it lay a firm will, shaped by love and by raising an exceptional son. That son, Owen, had bought her a quiet house by Serenity Lake, just outside town, insisting she deserved a place where she could breathe away from the noise. Those weeks there were his gift to her. Alara pushed open the glass door of the mountaintop diner, and a little bell chimed to announce her arrival. The place was the heart of the town, worn wooden booths, red vinyl stools, and the comforting smell of freshly brewed coffee, bacon, and maple syrup, exactly the kind of place she loved. Behind the counter stood Chloe Vance, a young woman in her early 20s, with an attentive gaze and curly hair pulled back without much fuss. Born and raised in Aspen Ridge, she knew both the town's calm and its dark side well, and she gave Alara a genuine smile. "Good morning, ma'am. Table for one." "Yes, please," Alara replied softly, asking for a booth by the window. As she settled in, she looked outside and noticed a young man adjusting a camera on a tripod. It was Liam Webb, a travel vlogger who filmed authentic places across the United States, smiling, full of energy, searching for the perfect shot of the diner for his video. The piece didn't last long. A deep, mocking voice shattered the atmosphere like a sharp blow. Well, look who showed up, more outsider money strolling around here." The voice belonged to Keed Jennings, a large man in his 50s, heavy not from work but from alcohol and resentment, his face always flushed and his small eyes looking at everything as if it belonged to him. He wore dirty work clothes and a crooked grin. He was sitting with two other men who laughed whenever he did. Alara ignored him and lowered her eyes to the menu, but Keed didn't accept being ignored. He stood up and walked toward her, his boots thudding on the floor as the diner's murmur died away. Everyone knew him. Everyone knew it was better not to cross him. He stopped beside her table, casting his shadow over her. "Don't see many like you around here," he said with false politeness. Alara looked at him calmly. "The coffee here is excellent," she replied without provocation. Behind the counter, Chloe tightened her jaw. She knew exactly what was happening. Keed was the enforcer for Sterling Croft, the developer who wanted the lakefront land, and his job was to pressure those who wouldn't give in. Chloe slid out her phone and started recording. Keed's smile widened. "Enjoy it while you can. Some of us are trying to protect this town from rich people who don't belong." "I have no intention of changing anything," Alara said with quiet firmness, even as a knot formed in her stomach. She thought of her late husband, of his silent dignity, and clung to that memory. Keed raised his voice so everyone could hear. "I heard you're the one holding back progress at the lake. Your son got a very generous offer, but you're being difficult." Then Alara understood. It wasn't a coincidence. It was about the house. "The house is not for sale," she said decisively. Keed leaned in closer. "Your family? The son who's never here and leaves you alone to get in the way of hard-working people." He planted his knuckles on the table. "Around here, we do things our way." Alara felt the eyes on her, fear, discomfort, but no one moved. Still, she didn't back down. "There is nothing natural about intimidating a woman to make her sell her home," she said calmly. "Now, please allow me to eat my breakfast in peace." Something snapped in Keed. His face darkened. The conversation ended, and the threat began. Alara stood, left money on the table, and said softly, "Have a good day," then turned to leave. That gesture enraged him. Keed moved fast, blocked her path, and flipped the table. The coffee cup went flying, hot liquid splashed across the floor, and the crash was sharp and violent. Alara jolted in shock, disoriented, and in that instant Keed raised his hand. The slap echoed through the entire diner. A cruel sound burned into everyone's memory. Alara fell to the floor with a groan, and the whole restaurant fell into absolute silence. Across the street, Liam's camera was still recording. Behind the counter, Chloe clenched her fists. Then the doorbell rang again. A man in his 30s walked in, dark flannel shirt, jeans, boots, simple appearance, but with a presence impossible to ignore. His body moved with absolute control. At his side, on a short leash, an imposing German shepherd walked in total calm. The man took in the scene, and his eyes locked onto his mother on the floor. It was Owen Wilson. The switch flipped. "Shadow, look," he said quietly. The dog responded instantly, positioning himself between Keed and Alara, without barking, just a clear warning. Keed stepped back. Owen knelt beside his mother. "Are you okay, Mom?" "Yes, son," she whispered. Owen helped her up, checked her marked face, and then looked at Keed with absolute coldness. "You've just made a very serious mistake." The silence inside the diner was so thick it felt like it could shatter if anyone breathed too hard. Owen stood motionless in front of Keed Jennings. He didn't shout or gesture, but his stillness was far more intimidating than any threat. The kind of calm only someone accustomed to real violence has, not cheap bravado. Keed, who minutes earlier felt like he owned the place, now hesitated, his eyes darting between the man and the dog, and for the first time in a long while, he didn't know what to do. From a booth in the back, Sheriff Brody Kent watched it all with a tired expression, as if this were just another annoyance in his morning. He set his coffee cup on the table and stood up slowly, adjusting his belt with the shiny badge, walking toward the center of the diner without hurry, with the confidence of someone who believes he's in control no matter what. "All right, that's enough," he drawled. "Everyone calm down. No need to exaggerate." He shot Keed a knowing look. "Been drinking this early again?" Keed swallowed and nodded quickly, clinging to the opening. "Nothing serious, Sheriff. Just a misunderstanding." "I saw what happened," Owen said in a low but firm tone, never taking his eyes off Keed. The sheriff turned toward him, sizing him up. "And who are you?" "He's my son," Alara replied, leaning on Owen, her voice still shaking. "Owen Wilson," he said. The sheriff raised an eyebrow. "Well, Mr. Wilson, we handle our matters civilly around here. Best you take your mother home, and let's leave it at that." It was a clear attempt to erase what had happened. Owen didn't hesitate. "This was an assault," he said plainly, "and I want an official report filed." The sheriff's relaxed demeanor tightened. "Listen, son, I'm the law here." It was a heated moment. Nobody was really hurt. Owen finally turned his gaze to him, and the sheriff felt a dull in his gut, as if he were suddenly no longer the man with power in the room. "My mother was struck and knocked to the ground," Owen said slowly. "There are witnesses. There are cameras. And that man," he pointed at Keed, "is going to be arrested, or this is going to escalate in a way you won't be able to control." He gave a slight tug on the leash. "Shadow, heel." The dog sat perfectly at his side, alert, eyes never leaving Keed. Owen wrapped an arm around his mother's shoulders. "Let's go, Mom." No one tried to stop them. As they passed the counter, Owen exchanged a brief look with Chloe, a silent gesture of thanks. Outside, the cold mountain air hit their faces. Owen helped Alara into the truck, checked her reddened cheek again, and though his voice remained calm, something inside him had hardened. He got into the driver's seat and pulled out a phone unlike any other, rugged, unmarked. He dialed a contact. "Wilson here," he said when the line connected. "Reporting a physical assault against a military dependent, my mother, Alara Wilson, in Aspen Ridge, Colorado. The aggressor is identified. Local police are compromised. Requesting immediate liaison with NCIS and case initiation." He listened in silence, nodded. "We have civilian recordings. I'll send them." He hung up and started the engine. Meanwhile, across the street, Liam Webb was in shock. He knew he'd captured something huge. Without a second thought, he packed his gear, went back to his cabin, and uploaded the unedited video. He chose a direct, brutal title and hit publish. The reaction was immediate. Within an hour, 100,000 views. In 3, more than 1 million. The comments exploded. Anger, support, questions, pure outrage. Veteran groups shared the video, then news pages picked it up, followed by national networks. The name Aspen Ridge was everywhere. In Denver, in a sleek office with glass walls, Sterling Croft stared at the screen, teeth clenched, his face twisted with fury. He slammed his fist on the desk and grabbed his phone. "Get Thorne on the line. Now." Mayor Garrison Thorne cut short a meeting when he saw the message, stepped into his office, and answered. "Did you see the video?" Croft spat. "Your thug is trending nationwide, attacking an elderly woman, and to top it off, her son is a Navy SEAL." A chill ran down Thorne's spine as he watched the footage. "This is a disaster." "Fix it," Croft replied coldly. "Bury it. Discredit the video. Pay whatever it takes. If this scandal puts the project at risk, the investors will want someone to blame." The call went dead. On social media, users had already done the work: names, connections, companies. Keed Jennings, Sterling Croft, Mayor Thorne. Everything began to surface. The pressure mounted. That same night, in the back room of a luxurious hunting lodge, the three men met. The place smelled of wood and dirty deals. Croft paced back and forth. "This isn't just about Keed," he said. "It's the son, Owen Wilson. He's not just any soldier. He's an active SEAL." Sheriff Kent shrugged. "The guy will leave." Croft looked at him with contempt. "You don't understand. That man is a professional problem solver. And now we're his problem." The mayor took a long drink. Silence settled heavily over the room, because for the first time, their small system was in real danger. For years, Aspen Ridge had operated like a small, closed kingdom, a place where important decisions weren't made in public meetings, but in private calls and backroom deals. And that night, as the wind rattled the trees around the hunting lodge, the three men realized their control was beginning to crack. The plan had always been simple. Sterling Croft provided the money and the investors. Mayor Garrison Thorne cleared the way with zoning changes and suspiciously fast approvals, and Sheriff Brody Kent made sure no one stepped out of line, using fines, inspections, and fear. When that wasn't enough, men like Keed Jennings showed up to push harder, to break the will of those who resisted. Most people eventually sold just to make it all stop. But this time, they had touched the wrong person. The next morning, Owen didn't wait around. Emails were sent, videos delivered with cold precision. NCIS received the material, analyzed the footage, and opened a formal case. And when a federal agency enters the picture, nothing stays small or local. In Aspen Ridge, Sheriff Kent felt the shift immediately. State patrols began to appear, and the usual easy smiles turned tight and forced. Keed Jennings was summoned to testify, this time not as a favor among acquaintances, but as a suspect in a case that could no longer be buried. His lawyer couldn't silence the internet, and every attempt to downplay what had happened only fueled public anger. Meanwhile, Alara rested in the house by the lake, ice pressed to her cheek, her heart still racing. Owen sat across from her, holding her hand, and for the first time since her husband had died, she felt she wasn't alone against the world. "I didn't want to cause you trouble," she said softly. "You didn't cause anything," Owen replied. "They did." The days that followed were a whirlwind. Reporters flooded the town. Neighbors finally spoke up, sharing stories of unfair fines, veiled threats, and damaged property. Everything they had kept quiet for years out of fear began to surface, and each testimony strengthened the case. Sterling Croft watched investors pull out one by one. The Aspen Preserve project was frozen, and his lawyers no longer promised solutions, only damage control. Mayor Thorne, pressed by uncomfortable questions and official inquiries, called a press conference where he spoke of misunderstandings and trusting the process, but his voice convinced no one. The final blow came when federal agents showed up at City Hall and the sheriff's office with warrants in hand. Computers seized, files examined, and the house of cards began to collapse. Brody Kent was suspended, then arrested, his arrogant expression gone as cameras rolled. Keed Jennings was formally charged with assault, and this time there were no laughs or supportive glances, only handcuffs and silence. Garrison Thorne's name appeared in the documents: bribes, favors, incriminating emails. His resignation came before he could offer explanations. Aspen Ridge, the town that had lived under fear, woke up all at once. One afternoon, Alara returned to the mountaintop diner. The bell chimed just as it always had, but the atmosphere was different. Chloe greeted her with a nervous, sincere smile. Several customers stood and applauded quietly, not for spectacle, but out of respect. Alara sat in the same booth, looked out the window, and took a deep breath. She wasn't seeking revenge, only peace, and at last she felt it. Outside, Serenity Lake reflected the gray autumn sky, untouched, protected. Owen stayed a few more days, then returned to his service. Not as a hero seeking recognition, but as a son who had done what needed to be done. Shadow walked at his side, alert and calm. Aspen Ridge didn't become perfect overnight, but something had changed. People had seen that fear is not invincible, and that even the powerful can fall when they believe no one is watching. And it all began with an elderly woman who refused to lower her head, and a son who walked through a door at exactly the right moment.